I know Vogue did an article earlier this year calling 2025 the summer without trends. It's not just Vogue that's been talking about this. I've seen a lot of murmurings online, but now that 2025 is coming to an end, I kind of want to do a look back and examine the evidence as to whether the trend cycle actually did slow down or not. It's a lot to talk about, so let's get into it. Before we do, welcome back to the channel and happy holidays wherever you're celebrating, or if this is just a random day for you, then happy random day. If you're new to the channel, then hi, my name's Katie. I talk a lot about the fashion industry, analysis, sustainability talk, trends, and all of the good stuff. So make sure you're subscribed and let's get into it. Firstly, I want to summarize the evidence I collected that proves the fashion industry did in some ways slow down this year. And I know we had a few trends take off this year, but I definitely saw less of them. Definitely less micro trends, less cores and aesthetics that normally take over TikTok. And instead I saw it replaced with recommendations for styles that come back every year, a lot of classic patterns coming back into play, and I guess a lot of safe fashion advice. Even with some of the big trends we did see, I feel like they lasted longer than they normally do. Like take polka dots, which were big even before 2026 started, and I saw carry through well into autumn winter, and they're even still showing up in 2026 predictions too, especially on the runways. Speaking of the runways, I saw so many brands and catwalks focusing on classic pieces or elevated styles rather than bold statement pieces or something a little bit more unexpected, but not exactly in a quiet luxury way, more of a back to basics way. Both on the runways and with people dressing on TikTok, I think we saw a return of this 90s minimalism that definitely ties in, with a lot of people on TikTok romanticizing basic outfits and the simplicity of the 90s, and just a kind of return of simple, safe fashion. Speaking of TikTok, I definitely saw less dupes going viral, alongside this kind of anti-polyester debate heating up. And I think both of these things tie in, at least slightly, to the anti-trend trend. There was a lot of talk online about the value of clothing and which brands do and don't provide quality, and also a total acceptance of this shift we've been seeing towards personal style being the goal, which I did a video about almost to the day last year, talking about it being my theme of 2024. And in 2025, I think we just saw this mature and shift into being an inevitable, a kind of subtext of all fashion discourse, because it's almost a given now that people want to develop their personal style. They want to have some sort of uniqueness in their outfit. They want to have an item that is basic but slightly elevated, slightly different from other people's. And that's why I think we saw a lot of customization trends going viral this year too. Anyway, that's kind of my anecdotal evidence I've collected over the year of the trend cycle slowing down. And more than that, I think it's an overall shift in the fashion industry, which has so long run on micro trends and big trends that encourage our overconsumption to the max. This feels like a macro shift in the discourse that started in 2024 with personal style and has kept maturing in 2025. And I think the next part of this discussion should be looking at why this has happened, why 2025 was the perfect breeding ground for the trend cycle to slow down. I think there's so many factors that influence this. If we start just within the fashion industry, then we could look at the designer debuts that dominated the conversation this year, and the fact that so many designers were designing their first collections for big houses, and it was already well known that a lot of them would play it safe, try to go back to basics of the house they're now designing for, and prove that they get that style, that they understand it, and then maybe in future collections they can further it, they can add their own twist on it. But for right now, classic styles, iconic designs is what we were predicted to see a lot of in 2025. I also keep mentioning 2024 as the starting point for this shift, and I think that's because a lot of the groundwork was laid that year, which we then saw built on this year. I've already mentioned the personal style, but also micro trend fatigue and dupe fatigue, I think really built over that past year and really influenced what TikTok was like this year. But also this ongoing conversation that keeps cropping up in a lot of viral TikTok discourse and a lot of subtext for luxury fashion articles and news, which is this growing lack of trust in the entire fashion industry, but most noticeably in the luxury fashion houses whose prices are going up and whose quality keeps being proven to be going down. I think also a few specific examples right at the end of 2024 really influenced how we came into 2025, like the Netflix Buy Now documentary coming out, or the underconsumption core and 75 hard challenges being right at the start of the year really had a shift on our mindset in 2025. And I think maybe a combination of all those things resulted in less manufactured trends going viral. Manufactured as in created by brands specifically designed to go viral on TikTok through influencer partnerships or through just sheer flooding the algorithms with examples. Maybe there was less of that because people weren't paying as much attention to brands, or we had this overlying distrust we've been building on has meant that we're not listening to them as much. And I guess tied to this is the influencer fatigue we've also been seeing a little bit this year, and I think we'll be seeing into 2026. And this kind of growing dislike of purely shopping influencers who just want to make money off of affiliate links, and the parallel rise of curators or people who can offer us something other than a shopping discount. And all of these factors within the fashion industry relate back to that video I did at the beginning half of this year, talking about the fashion industry's struggles to rebrand and how every tier of the fashion industry is struggling right now and really scrambling to stay afloat. So if you haven't watched that video, I think that's the one video I'd recommend you watch from all of my 2025 ones if you want to understand the fashion industry climate right now. Of course, that's just the fashion industry reasons for the trend cycle slowing down. I think we also need to look at the wider economic, political, social reasons that this could be happening. Like the rise of conservatism we've seen that's influenced a lot of fashion trends, including the quiet luxury trend, which has been trending for the past few years, which has kind of slowly killed off a lot of the cores and aesthetics that we've been seeing on TikTok. Like I've said on the channel before and sort of said in the evidence, I think quiet luxury is dying off now, or at least it's kind of rebranding into a back to basics mentality in fashion. And of course, a lot of that is going to be talking about timeless styles. So it makes sense it played a part in the slowing trend cycle. There's also been the rise of restriction and self-discipline creeping into society that we've seen kind of linked to the food advertising in fashion trend, the rise of cigarettes and skinniness in fashion, under consumption core, 75 hard, etc., etc. Like there's been so many examples of that this year. And again, a lot of them don't exactly lend themselves to fleeting trends, impulse purchasing, overconsumption. It's all about restricting yourself. And I think that's extended to fashion. Of course, the massive elephant in the room is the economic uncertainty of 2025, and especially the tariff situation. Not only have people been buying less because prices have gone up and the idea of keeping up with fashion trends when the price of eggs is becoming an issue, kind of laughable, but we're also wary of future issues that might come about through Trump's whims or any other kind of geopolitical uncertainty. And that will definitely be influencing the psychology of us buying into classic styles versus impulse purchasing things that we don't see a long-term future for. And that mentality is not just hitting us as consumers, it's hitting brands too. A lot of them, when faced with Trump's tariffs, started buying only evergreen lines or lines they could push year round because they were so uncertain of delivery times and tariffs going up and down during the summer, autumn, winter period. I mean, the fact recession indicator was a big talking point or trend this year kind of proves this mentality. But also back in 2024, McKinsey reported that brands had started thinking about extended commercial cycles for their clothing and had also started increasingly opting out of calendar events, which kind of shows that fashion has been expecting this slowdown for a while. And yeah, it's most likely a combination or a little bit of all of those factors I've just mentioned in the fashion industry and outside of it. But I think the biggest standalone factor that has really influenced the trend cycle this year has been our changing attitude to social media. The post-brain rot era is where we're shifting the importance of what we're wearing online to what we're wearing, but also discovering and talking about and experiencing offline is completely changing the game in fashion and completely changing the trend cycle. I think the vibe economy has influenced everything from clothes to what we're posting about. And it's led to an obsession with in real life moments that you had to be there for, things taking off for absolutely zero reason, or anything that feels remotely authentic, even if it's not. And I think so many of the things we've talked about on the channel this year tie into those three categories. Like the fact that influencer closet sales and in real life closet sales are becoming popular because it lends into that sense of community, exclusivity, in real life excitement, and the idea of being able to get a deal that no one else can shop online. I think a direct link between the trend cycle slowing down and more of us coming off our phones is the idea of what a high screen time has now come to represent. I wonder if dressing in a microtrend has become uncool now because it signifies that you're spending way too much time online. You're there to see fleeting trends and buy into them seemingly for internet cool points only. And to do the opposite, to have a low screen time and therefore not see these things, is now a status symbol. And the fact that the social conversation this year has been very much about fighting AI slop, the rise of intellectualism, kind of makes me wonder if part of this slowing down of the trend cycle is people linking micro trends and big fashion trends to being a sheep, being a follower of the algorithm, and in parallel having a messy, not so perfect, but perfect for you wardrobe is a sign of being smart or having a life offline. I don't know, I guess it depends how far you believe this psychology has permeated fashion. I think one very strong piece of evidence tying offline culture to the decline of the trend cycle is the rise of hobby culture we saw this year and how it displaces that use we previously saw for TikTok trends of buying into an aesthetic, buying into a hobby, buying into a culture without actually having to do those things that make you part of the hobby. Like, for example, ballet core was all about the clothes, but not about actually doing the sport. And of course, nothing's stopping you doing that now. But a lot of TikTok discourse has been placing emphasis on what you're doing, the hobbies you're picking up, the lifestyle you're now living. And I wonder if it's accidentally made cosplaying in TikTok cores or aesthetics redundant. Like, I guess how we saw Gorp core rising this year actually coincided with more people going outside and going hiking, enjoying outside sports and stuff. It felt a little bit more authentic than when we saw other trends centered around a lifestyle that didn't also have a parallel rise in that lifestyle activities. Does that make sense? We're getting increasingly more theoretical, but does this also link to one of the biggest internet discourse topics we saw this year, the rise of the performative male? Have we ever had a trend before that was so clearly centered around being performative in your wardrobe and calling that out? I wonder if this only came about because so many of us were trying to be more authentic this year, and that included actually tying our wardrobes to our hobbies rather than just pretending it did. And maybe this trend couldn't have happened in previous years, or maybe it was just linked to the is having a boyfriend embarrassing discussions that were going on as well. I don't know, you guys might have to decide that one. I want to offer another piece of evidence that the trend cycle did slow down in 2025. Note that I'm not saying stopped. I don't actually think it died, although I put that in the title for clicks. I think the trend cycle is going to always carry on because that's what fashion is built off of. But I clearly think it did slow down. And so does another writer from Substack that I really admire, Beth Bentley from Pattern Recognition. She did an article earlier in the year named "Is the Trend Cycle Finally Slowing Down?" Her explanation from us turning away from trends was, it's not just the economics of it all, it's the emptiness of it all. These short-lived trends are as psychologically unsustainable as they are environmentally unsustainable. I think it's clear why there has been such a sharp rise in heat around personal style over the past year or so. Set against the hollow churn of microtrends, nailing your own style offers us very sexy things. Permanence in the motion sickness whiplash merry-go-round. Autonomy when so much feels out of control. Individuality versus algorithm groupthink. Clarity in the confusing melee of too much choice. And I actually think that's such a good look at the psychology behind the trend cycle slowing down in 2025. All of these things that we crave in our everyday lives are kind of being packaged up and sold to us in the promise of personal style. I also kind of want to add one item to that list from Beth, which is the idea of self-identity and this craving we're all feeling to know ourselves more and more. Maybe it's just a part of growing up, and as Gen Z matures, that kind of self-identity is a natural response. But also, I think in the age of algorithms and more of us trying to turn away from algorithms, this idea of not knowing ourselves, wanting to have our own opinions that aren't generated by watching a 30-second TikTok is becoming more and more important. And I think it kind of relates to the age of the curator that I think we're going to see in 2026, and I'm going to be doing a video on. And I've been thinking about that topic for a while, and I really think it's going to be big in 2026, so I want to bring it out soon. Okay, to round up this video, I think we need to talk about what this actually means for fashion in 2026, because part of me wonders if this is just whiplash from the explosion of trends we saw in the first half of the 2020s, and we'll have this period of slowing down only to speed right back up again as people want more and more trends. I think that's a very real possibility, but I think there's an other possibility, whether equal or not, that this is actually a slow societal permanent shift we're going to see, as we've kind of seen the highs and lows of that social media can possibly offer, and more of us become warier and warier of it, and restrictions will come further in. And, you know, we'll never get back to that period of unfiltered, lawless social media content. And I mean, we've kind of already started seeing these restrictions for the fashion industry and trend cycles come in with France's ban on influencers selling Shein clothes. So in that way, it kind of solidifies the idea that this might be permanent. I don't know. I think for us as individuals, it can only be a good thing for us to slow down the trend cycle and focus less on what we're wearing and more on who we are and how we want to live life, and let our clothes serve that rather than living for our clothes. And although parts of the offline trend feel performative, I think it has its roots in good. I think the ultimate end result of becoming more engaged with the world, with your friends and family, and leaving the place where rage bait and AI slop are dominating can only be good for mental health. There's obviously still consumptive traps we can fall into offline, and there's definitely benefits to social media that have been spoken about for years, but decentering social media from fashion in particular can remove so much of that social pressure to keep being on trend, which kind of makes me wonder, actually, in terms of sustainable fashion, is this the only thing that's going to be able to close the attitude behavior gap? I mean, telling people fast fashion is bad for the planet only got us so far, but making micro trends a low status behavior could get us some real progress. We kind of have to look at the flip side of this briefly and talk about what it means for brands and the fashion industry. I mean, because I'm kind of hoping this means that the peak of overconsumption is at its end and we're slowly going to start coming back down the wave. Like the micro trend that came every month and the sales that came with it for brands is going to be over soon. But I don't think it's going to be the end of the world like I think brands want us to think. It's not going to mean brands go completely out of business, or that, you know, the billionaire CEOs have to live like normal people. Because I think with this slowdown of the trend cycle comes people wanting to invest in quality, invest in classic pieces that will stand the test of time. And we've already started seeing that in 2025. I think overall it's a shift in priority for what people want, and the brands that understand that and cater to that will be fine. Actually, Amy Francombe wrote in an article for Vogue Business sort of about this. And she said, in 2025, marketers moved past hype chasing, whether through micro trends or mimicking internet speak, and recognized that reach without resonance was ultimately a dead end. Which is why I think in 2025, we saw so many brands focusing less on the clothes they were selling and more on the lifestyle that they were offering us to be able to buy into. And that did really well for some brands. Maybe there's a path forward there. Do I think this entire thing is going to last? Do I think we're never going to see a micro trend again? And do I think Gen Alpha is going to follow in Gen Z's footsteps and this is just going to be the way the world is now? Probably not. No. But I'm going to enjoy this while it lasts, I think. And I hope that it proves to a lot of people that the TikTok trend cycle is just so unnecessary. And maybe that will make a difference in the amount of people that get back into it. The last thing I want to end this video with was how Amy ended her article in Vogue. In a landscape saturated with slop, substance has never mattered more. And doesn't that just sum up your thoughts on 2025? Okay, and with that, we've reached the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did and you're not subscribed, then subscribe, please. Come find me on my other social medias and we can hang out. And I hope you have a lovely Christmas period, whatever you're doing, whoever you're with. I'll speak to you guys very soon. Bye.